KQ on the Avenue is made possible in part with funds from Genesee Valley Council of the Arts Aid to Localities program.
We'd like to welcome you to KQ on the Avenue. We'd like to welcome you to KQ on the Avenue. We'd like to welcome you to KQ on the Avenue. We'd like to welcome you to KQ on the Avenue.
What is going on, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in. Welcome to KQ on the Avenue. This is a podcast that exists to uplift underrepresented voices in the arts and especially literature. I'm so excited for the guest that we have today. I will just introduce her really quickly, and we got a lot to talk about. But today I'll be introducing Zenobia Anderson. She is of Afro-Caribbean heritage and was born in Queens, New York. Shout out Queens. I'm not from there, but I just want to shout it out for you. And grew up across the South. She has been a dentist since 2009, which we'll definitely get into that. And she currently lives in San Antonio, Texas, and she has lived there for the past 15 years. She recently won the African Diaspora Award for 2025. Let's go. For her poetry collection, Mosaics of the Mother. She has a collection of sonnets that will be published in a Shakespearean anthology for, I might mess this up, Quill Keepers Press. In their All the World's a Page. That'll be released in 2026. She has also been published and shortlisted with the honorable mention for poetry with the Dark Poets Society, and has a long-listed collection of poetry, Survivors of the Sea, published in Black Butterfly, Voices of the African Diaspora. Welcome, Zenobia Anderson.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited. I am excited. Let's go.
Yes. So happy to have you here today. First, how are you feeling? Tell the people where you're coming from, actually. Let's start there.
Well, I blazed over here from downtown, the Central Library. I was fortunate enough to be selected for their Big Read zine. It's basically one of their magazines that they do. They're celebrating their 1-year anniversary, and 2 of my poems were featured. Right next to me. Look at that. Already available. So if you're in the area, pick up that Big Read zine, and you can read some of my work as well as see a lot of the great artists here in San Antonio. We have so many, and yeah, it was exciting, but I wanted to make sure I was here.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, thank you for prioritizing us here. And this the artist work, you know what I'm saying? You're doing the thing, you're getting out there, reading and making time for a podcast. So you gotta love that. Well, yeah, so thank you for being here. So I always start with I don't like calling them icebreakers because everybody hates icebreakers, but always a question that I don't really pose before the podcast starts. So actually, you've already taught me something that I didn't know before meeting you. So I went on your website. And I read your bio on your website. Lovely bio, by the way. But something that caught my eye was the word mellophile. So all my life, I have not known what a mellophile is, right? And now that I know, it is a lover of music in general. Just a general lover of music, and I now know what to call myself. But you are that as well. And so I'm so excited, but that is part of my question, right? So my question to you is, if you could only listen to one song. Yeah.
No.
There's no exceptions. There's no, can I get 3? The rest of your life. And it was like, I have to wake up and listen to this song. It's the only music you got for the rest of your days.
Oh man.
Which one can't you live without?
Oh, don't do this to me, Wayne. It's so hard. So right now, I can tell you I'm really big into Emily King and Leon Thomas.
Okay, shut up.
But I listen to so much. If I had to pick one song, I'm thinking it's probably going to be jazz because the words would get old quick. I feel like you would start to memorize it over and over.
Yeah.
So when it comes to jazz, my dad plays a lot of instruments. I play a couple, but he kind of got me into jazz.
Mhm.
Oh man, I can't.
You got to pick one.
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna pick Emily King this year. I'm just gonna
Emily
go ahead
King
and
this
pick
year.
Emily King this year because I feel
Okay.
like this is gonna be a good year coming up, and yeah,
Okay. All
very
right.
positive energy. Even though I don't know, it's one of the first things that pop up in my head because that's what I
Yeah.
listened to not too long
No,
ago.
that makes sense. That makes sense. All
Yeah.
right, guys, we're gonna have Emily King this year in the links
Okay. Yes.
below, so we're gonna
She had
hook
a
that
tiny
up.
desk, which was amazing.
Yeah,
Amazing.
that's awesome. That's awesome. I have the only song, and I don't listen to it all the time, but I know I can never live without it. Is Frank Ocean's Pyramids. I don't know if you've.
Ooh, that's a good one.
I could
I like
never.
pink and white, I think, a little bit better,
Wait,
maybe.
say that again.
I like the pink and white, Frank
Pink and
Ocean.
White is a good song, but yeah, I mean Frank Ocean's like my top artist, like
Okay.
probably
Okay.
like of all time. But yeah, Pyramids is like that one song where I'm like, I would listen to that on repeat over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So
I love
yeah.
how music just takes you, no matter like what's going on. I feel like music is so therapeutic.
Mm,
And, whatever mood you're in, you can find an artist that either
hmm.
matches it or puts you in a mood that you want to be in.
Yeah.
And it's poetry with lyric and with
Yeah.
music. So,
Yeah.
instruments.
You have a genre that you're like, this is my
Yeah.
favorite genre. I know I ask these questions a lot, but so I know it's not like a
So, yeah, I mean, right now I'm really big into R&B and a lot of jazz. But when I was younger, I listened to like rock. I listened to rap. I'm totally open. My
mhm.
kids introduced. I'm a 12-year-old, so he
Oh
introduces
yeah.
me to music all the time. Some of it good, some of it absolutely not. But,
Hmm.
that's part of it. I like the
Yeah.
oldies, especially the '70s. I like the '70s a
Oh
lot,
yeah.
and that's probably the influence of my parents. My
Yeah.
dad used to be a DJ in New York, and
Okay.
so
Oh,
I remember going through his records, but I also like country. So
okay.
I like Texas, I'm an adopted Texas girl,
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I love there's a
That's
lot of
cool.
great, country artists too, so I'm
Yeah.
really open.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank
Mhm.
you for indulging in my initial
Yes, I love you.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, music is great. But you mentioned too, even in that, just the you being in Texas now, right? First off, San Antonio happens to be my favorite Texas city
Oh, for real? Oh,
in
that's
general.
awesome.
Yeah, I did a trip to Texas years ago, and we hit like all the different like Houston, Austin, and like we stopped in San Antonio, and that was like I love this place. Like, so
There's a lot of history here. There's a lot of great art here. I mean,
yeah,
people skip over us a lot. I get mad when I have to go to different
yeah,
concerts outside of here, but
yeah. I
but
know.
I mean, Houston's another great city. But I really, I feel like it's a big little small town,
Mm,
a big little small city kind of thing.
yeah,
Where it's great to raise a family. There's lots to do. I
yeah.
really like it. I like to tell
So,
everybody Alex Haley wrote Roots on the Riverwalk. I'm doing that on the Riverwalk. I
oh
was
my
like,
gosh,
that's some good information. There we go.
and I've
So
been there, which is great. So now I have like
yes,
yeah.
yes, yes.
That's awesome. So how has you seem like you've traveled a lot in your life, just first off, going from being in New York. I don't know how long you were there, but like what was kind of like that transition like being, Queens, New York,
Right.
then growing up in the South? If you give us some context to like, how
Yeah.
traveled you are.
So travel is a big part of my life and my family's entire legacy. When I was really
Mm,
thinking about this piece, this collection that I submitted, I thought about all the traveling that went on. Some of it, forced migration, of course, the slavery that wasn't our choice, but even the people once they got here moved, and we all ended up in New York. My
yeah.
great grandmother and my grandmother immigrated here on Ellis Island,
Mm,
um, and we were fortunate enough to actually find her photographs, her passport.
what?
They were really cool. I got to look at her handwriting, her signature, and it just kind of, really brings you in that American experience that you don't think, and especially in a time where discussion of immigrants is a fiery one, and there's a lot of, misconceptions and prejudice. It really makes me feel strong that we're people that, yes, we
Mm.
were moved, but we also were able to move and make our own choices and decisions
Yeah.
on where we wanted to go. And so, yeah, I was born in Queens, New York. I was born in the 80s. That's as specific as I'm going to get. I'm an
Shout
80s
out to the
baby.
80s.
I lived there until I was about 6 or 7 years old. So I have a lot of memories of our small home, going to the beach in Rockaway. I have a lot of family there still. So I went to visit actually in March most recently.
Okay.
And then I went to kindergarten and first grade. And then we moved to Virginia, and I lived in Hampton, Arkansas, and
Oh,
then we
wow.
made our way to Texas.
Okay.
And yeah, we just kind of cut across. My dad,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
uh, brought us around. We're not military or anything, but I
Hmm.
think it does something to you as a person. I feel like in my life, I've also made a lot of transitions. Um, and it kind of parallels that,
Yeah.
I used to be a really quiet kid, and everyone makes fun of me when I say that. I was painfully shy, but I also think I was very observant. Um,
Mm.
one of my favorite poets is Lucille Clifton, and she says, what is the role of the poet? To see with your eyes, hear with your ears, and witness. And I think
Hmm.
as children, you naturally do that,
Yeah.
and in many ways, some children, I was one of those, and my parents would tell me, like, the teachers would call and they'd be like, is everything okay? Is she all right? She's so quiet. She's a good student. She's bright, but why doesn't she speak? And I think a lot of it is that, in those quiet spaces, you get to kind of observe and learn. And that fascinated me. And
Mm.
so every time we'd have to move, though, it forces you to be more outgoing. It forces you to
Yeah.
learn how to talk to people, especially because my career, my Eaton profession, as a dentist in healthcare, you have to know how to speak to people. You want people to feel comfortable in your presence. And if I'm just too quiet, then sometimes that, is off-putting. So I've
Hmm.
learned, throughout the years in different environments, how to communicate, and as I've gone back to my childhood passion of writing, I
Yeah.
found myself going back to being a little bit more introverted again as far as my day to day, because I'm just trying to, observe and process, and that's how I get a lot of my writing out right now.
Wow. I love your story is cool because, like, one, you have dentistry over here, right? So we definitely got to talk about that, right? And then you got like poetry, right? I mean, maybe you didn't pick one first. Was there like a point in your life where you're like, I am writer, and then was there a point in your life where you're like, I'm gonna go be a dentist, or what? How do those
Yeah,
two things
so
come
it's an
together for
interesting
you?
story.
Okay, tell us.
So, having Afro-Caribbean heritage on my dad's side from Barbados again, they have a 99% literacy rate. They do not play. They're one of
What?
the top in the world as far as literacy rates.
Oh, you put me on to some
So
knowledge.
we had, it was very important to make sure you had that. My grandmother, we called her grandmommy. She was Mensa in the top 2% IQ in the world. So as far as education, that was so important. Even on my mother's side as well, they are not of Caribbean heritage, but from the South Carolina, North Carolina region. Got some big brains going on over there as far as,
Hmm.
my grandfather got 3 scholarships to go to engineering school, and he was an engineer in New York. And he also was one of the first Black Freemasons, first Black fraternities here in the United States. I'm not talking about the college fraternities, I mean the
Yeah,
Masons.
yeah,
And he
yeah,
was the leader of his temple in New Mexico. And so that was always important. So when I considered writing and loving stories and things like that, I did not think of it as a career. And
mm,
when I was in school and the teachers were like, "Oh, she should go into science or something like that. I was just like, okay. I just felt like I was supposed to go in a certain direction, but I don't regret it at all. It's been a huge blessing in our lives, in our families' lives. But after, doing it for several years, there was just something missing. I knew that it wasn't my full passion.
Mm.
And I started thinking about it, and I was like, I think I'm going to go back and start writing again. And so, being the nerd that I am, I was always in the library. I took our kids to
Yeah.
the library in the summer. I saw that they had a writing workshop. And so that's where I found my amazing mentor, Pat, and he encouraged me to write. Our whole writing group is amazing because we get to share our work, but critique each other. And, sometimes writers,
Mhm.
we're already sensitive. Artists are sensitive people, okay?
Yeah.
We're sensitive about our, okay? And so it's given me strength, and I feel like I've been able to grow so much because of that, because of the feedback, yes, and the ability to take rejection, because there's a lot of that
Mhm.
that comes with writing. Um, and it's also been very encouraging to see how, when you go and towards your passion, how the world just seems to open up with opportunity. I mean, I just finished reading The Alchemist. It's not a poetry book, but a lot of people are familiar
Mhm.
with that tale. And it's like, when you follow your personal legend, the world just conspires to, help you.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
I find that to be so true. I found that to be so true. So, with my husband, with my kids, I'm always like, whatever it is that, is in your heart and that you love, you do it, and that's where you find your treasure.
Yeah. And so,
So that's
and
a very long answer to that
no,
question.
it's a great answer. I love that. I love all of that. And I think what you just said is actually something super important for listeners to hear as well, because I think sometimes the trajectory to writing or poetry or whatever it is, it looks different for everybody. And I think some people who may not have been writing, every day for all of their life, and they went off and they got a career and stuff like that. It's like, how do I even get into writing something that I used to love? And like, as far as, I love that encouragement of like, I just went to, the library and I got involved in a writers group and I got a mentor, and like, because some people think, well, you can't even get into it unless you have a writing degree or you studied English and you've read all these books forever and all this stuff. And I think your story is so encouraging because it's like, no, I did go and get the career, and I did, I had, I got a legacy that's like, pushing me forward. I gotta make them proud, and there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? But there's also nothing wrong with going back to something you love too and finding it.
It's that balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
One thing is too much. You want to find that balance, and you want to be able to eat, you want to be able to do nice things, but you also want to have that space to be creative and to be independent in your thought. And so I went to Prairie View A&M, a historically Black college, right outside of Houston, in a small town called Prairie View. People outside of Texas are like, what? But it's an amazing school. It is, and it's an amazing school. And I had great mentors there, made some great friends there. And then when I decided to apply to dental school, I lived in Kentucky, and that was another great experience. It's a
Okay.
beautiful, beautiful state. Louisville, we say.
Louisville.
Beautiful Louisville.
Louisville.
You say Louisville, I'm like, you didn't live there.
Nah.
it's,
Nah.
like, it's like your tail is how you say it.
Yeah.
But all those pieces, I think, of the story, I think at some points I was like, dang, I wish I would have been able to go and study writing, but that would have totally changed the trajectory of where my life is right now. So
Yeah.
as time goes on, I've started to really take a lot of gratefulness for my journey, and
Mm.
um, peace with decisions that I've made, because they're a part of my story. And wherever direction that people are going in their writing, be encouraged. And there's so many ways to learn now, outside of traditional school, not to put down traditional
Mhm.
school. Obviously, I believe in it, but
Yeah.
um, there are so many great like podcasts and things that I've watched about writing, about technique, about style that has been really helpful in addition. And I do read a lot. I
Mhm.
love reading poetry, but I also like to read, just books, just things
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
come up. Mhm.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, no, I just think that's super encouraging. I hope listeners take heed of that. But as far as like that legacy too, you
Mm.
mentioned what was it, your grandmother's maiden name,
Yes.
right? Please tell our view because I love this story. I think this is beautiful.
So,
Tell us
yeah,
about
it's so beautiful because when you dig into your passion, sometimes things come up that you don't really realize is part of you. And
it. Mm,
so doing the Mosaics of the Mother, I was doing research about migration, and I was reading about up on my ancestry, .com, and learning from family members more details about our family's story. And I looked up my grandmother's maiden name, which is Baird. And her story is amazing just on its own, but you know, when I looked it up, it said that it had a Scottish Irish kind of thing, which I was like, that is so weird. But
yeah.
really, it's not. When I go back, indentured servants in Barbados, they called them redlegs, and they
Mm.
were of Irish descent. So I'm thinking maybe there was some
Oh
kind of
wow.
something going on there as far as
Yeah.
how we got that ancestry and that name, which means minstrel, poet, singer. And I was like, poet? It's in our name, you know? And my grandmother had a beautiful singing voice. She also played classical piano.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
my dad is hilarious. So and a musician.
Oh my
Everybody's a
gosh.
musician and we all love music. So it's amazing how the love that we have in our spirit like reconnects in our
Hmm.
previous and our destiny and our ancestry. Sometimes you find that it's always been a part of your legacy, and so that
Yeah.
was really really cool to see that.
Man, there's so many dots connecting in my head. Now that we're like digging into this
For
stuff.
sure.
But
Yeah. Well,
um,
okay.
I love that story though too. And it's so weird how stuff like that happens. You almost feel like it's just something that just like fate or something. I had a similar thing happen to me. I'm a poet as well. I don't know if I even told you that, but uh, and one day I showed my grandma like some of my work and stuff like that, and she's like, you remind me of your great grandfather. And I was like, what do you
Wow.
mean? And she's like, he used to recite poetry all throughout. Like, and I'm
Oh,
like, I
that's
never, all these years, I'm like, I never knew any of this stuff. You know what I mean? And so now sometimes when I'm writing, I'm like thinking about like this legacy that like I didn't even know that I was kind of like walking into. And I
it's
think,
amazing.
yeah,
They're, you know, especially Black Americans, we hear about generational trauma. We all have
mhm,
gone through stuff, right?
yeah,
Well, we don't always tell those stories, the positive legacy.
yes,
We are beyond that too is also important. Yes, we inherit some of the bad, but some of the good too. One of
hmm,
the poets that I started looking into kind of some of this about was Diane Lee Antigua. And
hmm,
I believe she's Dominican and she's from, I think she was a poet laureate out of Massachusetts. And I
okay,
saw a podcast with her and she was talking about something called oh wait, let me not say it wrong, epigenetics, where it's basically, this is really cool. So, you know how you inherit things genetically from your family. But
hmm,
did you know that scientists are finding your environment and trauma can also be passed down and it change the expression of the genes in your body.
really,
It's very interesting. There's a lot of really cool studies going on about that. And so I'm like, well, if the trauma can be passed down, what else can we be passed down in the environments that we create? Right.
think
And
you're
so
onto something.
that's what writing does, right? It's like thinking out loud and connecting
Yeah.
dots. And it always comes back to like, we are one, we are part of a legacy. We bring our ghosts and our spirits with us,
Hmm.
I believe that. Yeah.
It's powerful. That's good. Oh man, so many ways I could take this right now. But one of the things that I'm hearing, even as we're talking in your story, right, is there's this connection, it seems like, between excellence, right, and like artistic expression, right? And those two things are kind of like not just in you, but like even in your family, like before you,
Mhm.
right? Like, all these accolades academically, but yet so much artistic like ingenuity, like just coming and like meeting, right? And then even being passed down to you, you know. I was very interested in just some of your inspirations as
Mm,
far as like poetry. One that I think, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up, Nikki Giovanni, of course,
of
right?
course.
You know,
Yes.
and she is someone that exudes exactly that, like that excellence and that, artistic just freedom and everything. I would love to hear like what she means to
Yeah.
you.
So it's interesting. I had only read a few pieces of hers until I bought a big collection of her
Hmm.
poetry. And oh man, she goes in with the N word. I don't say it a lot, but she's so brave. Like,
Yeah.
what I respect so much about her writing and as an artist is that for her time, especially as a Black female in coming up in the younger side of the civil rights, movement, literally writing her poetry. There have been stories that I've read about her where she literally was passing out her first book on the street because she didn't think anyone would want to publish it.
Yeah.
And the strength, she didn't have the loudest voice. And I always feel bad about my poetic voice when I read because I cannot sing. I feel like I have a little bit of insecurity about that. I feel like people that read poetry the best have a beautiful singing
Mhm.
voice. Um, and so I felt like, I really related with her story, and she's a Gemini and I'm a Gemini.
Mm.
And it just, I feel like she was a kindred spirit. Her documentary, Going to the Moon,
Mhm.
that's how it's called. I think it was on HBO. That was huge, and learning about her and seeing about her life. I also love Lucille Clifton. Lucille Clifton, I feel a very spiritual connection when I read her work.
Mhm.
She's very, as a mother, and she would write. Same with Maya Angelou. When I read
Yeah.
about her story and I read her poetry, how she would, work with her, kiddos, and then, go out and do spoken word events, and then put on a robe, and then the kids would wake up and she'd be like, "Hey kids," I'm like,
You
he's
don't
like, I
even
was
know
so
I was just
girl, so
doing.
I was like, "Girl, I can't leave my all night long." It's
Yeah.
different time. It's different time.
Different times.
And then out and a lot of people laugh at this, but I love Edgar Allan Poe. And
Yeah, that's interesting.
people think that, why Edgar Allan Poe? But I think for all the light, there's a space for the darkness and the
Mhm.
and the wander and the fascination with life and death, and knowing that this life isn't forever. And
Mm.
I think that's also really important. So I'm a big fan of Edgar Allan Poe. I use the Raven reference a lot
Yeah.
in my poetry. I also love Toni Morrison. I love listening to her audiobooks. If anyone,
Her voice
her books
is.
are pretty long. Her voice, and I'm terrified of Beloved. that book,
Um,
that book scares me so, like, there's something that feels very close to home to me. I don't know what, it scares me to death. But
mhm.
jazz, listening to her read jazz, it's like just the mastery of editing and language. And that's something that I struggle with, because once I write something, I get excited and I'm like, let's put it out there. I'm like, no, I'm trying to, as I grow as a writer, I'm like, hold on.
Yeah. I need the world to see this right now, right now.
Because I'll go back and read it and be like, that wasn't quite done. That wasn't. But that's part of the process. Like, how can you be a good writer until you write bad things, you know, or incomplete things, you know?
Talk about it.
And so, you know, this journey, you know, I have so many, a lot of female poets, James Baldwin. I feel like sometimes his ego in his conversations with Nikki, which I mentioned in one of the
I wanted to get into that a little bit. Just like, because you wrote in that poem, was it Flower Delivery to Outer Space? I needed to see the back and forth tugs of cigarette puffs, and I knew exactly which interview you were talking about, because I watched that entire thing probably multiple times. And it was the most interesting conversation, because I was just discovering Nikki Giovanni at the time, and I wasn't like as super familiar with Baldwin, but I knew, because he's a very public figure, right? So I knew him and of his like politically and stuff, like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And when I watched that thing, it let me into like layers of what it means to be Black on a whole different like plane.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the brilliance in that conversation.
Yeah.
You know, the clip that I was referring to is the one where she had Baldwin take a beat, and anyone that's ever seen Baldwin speak, it's hard for him to pause and take a beat and think like, you know what, maybe she got me on that one, because he is so brilliant and so fast, quick-witted, and so is she. And so she was saying the only thing that she knows that works is a relationship. But what she is struggling, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, is that, you know, when her partner comes home, he's given so much to be, especially if your partner is a person of color, Black man, you know, they deal with so much stress, but they're able to pretend and, you know, oh, everything's good, and crack jokes and be respectable and all that. But then when they come home, you give the least to me, the people that love you. And then in the worst circumstances, some people are abusive to their partners who they supposedly love. And so I felt like that was such an important conversation for the time, because in tough, difficult times of mayhem, like in the 70s, and I feel like that we're in right now, that stress builds. And it's important that we don't have to be so exhausted at home. We pretended all day, you know. It's so important to hold on to that realness. I think that's the most important thing, is when you can do it at home, you know. So it was just a really great conversation, because he was like, well, I don't want to lie, I don't know. And she's like, what, you lie all day? Lie to me.
Lie to me.
Lie to me till you get these kids out of this house, you know. It was a very I encourage everyone. I have it. If you guys follow me, it's on my page. You guys will see some of that conversation, and I cite exactly where I got it from. So I try to be good about that, because I know the internet ain't safe. It's just, can't believe what you see. But that is a legitimate video.
No, it is a legitimate.
No
video.
AI.
It's not AI. I'll tell you what, those lines that you're referring to in that whole sequence changed just the way. Well, first off, Nikki Giovanni changed the way I like envisioned, like, because I got her book Love Poems, and it top tier, the way I even think about writing love poems, love all the stuff, right? Great. But in that video, in that interview, when she says like, if you love me, fake it with me, I was like, it's like, what?
Heartbreaking, right? The way she says it.
I didn't know how to take it. Like, what, like when I first heard it, I was like, it almost was like hurt, like, oh dang, like, okay. But and you would think that it's calling you to continue to be fake with her, but it's like, nah, I think there's this opposite thing that she's getting at, where it's like, just be real in every situation. Like, you know what I mean? Like, don't give 50% here and 100% there, and don't, like, you know what I mean? She's just calling for, and I was like, and it made me have to like look in the mirror, like, oh dang, all right. Like, you know what I mean?
How does the performance stop at home?
Exactly.
Like, wait
Yeah.
a minute, what happened? And I know
Yeah.
everybody's tired at the end of the day. I'm not saying come home and be like,
Yeah.
sometimes you are tired and you're just like, please don't look at me. I want to go take a shower. But
Yeah.
it's just, on that level where she was saying that chronic, you know, abuse or neglect, like Black families need love at home for each other and for the children, and it's not enough to just, you know, show up and be harmful, be
Mhm.
hurtful when all day long you've been everybody's best friend.
Yeah. That's so good. Shout out
Mhm.
Nikki Giovanni.
Right.
That
Rest in power.
rest in power to her.
Mhm.
And as someone, as Nikki Giovanni, again, she's super influential, even for like just me as a poet, and of course bridging that gap between like not bridging the gap, but like connecting excellence and artistic quality too. Like, and I see that in your poetry. First off, one of the things I really love after I was reading a lot of your work, right, is, and I feel like I don't see this as often as I would like to. Let me word it like that. As often as I would like to in some poetry. But your experimentation with form is like, I just love it. First
Yeah.
off, I didn't know anybody else knew what a tonka was. Let me start there. I tried to write a tonka like very early on in like my writing life or whatever. And I was like, nobody knows what this is. No one
Right.
writes this. Everyone writes haiku and everyone does all the other stuff. No one does
Yeah.
this, right? So when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh. But
That's
but
awesome. Thank
you have
you.
that. You have the sonnets that you're writing. And just you're experimenting with different sounds and stuff like that is just super exciting to read. So like
Thank
I
you.
was having a field day
Oh,
um
thank
with
you.
with a lot of your work. And actually I wanted to know just kind of what makes you want to experiment with that kind of stuff. So I think it's
Yeah.
easy to feel like you have the story, right? Like you got the story, we have the story, we got the Black experience, we got all the things, right? What makes you want to experiment in the different forms and the untraditional like kind of natures, and how does that work for you in the creative process?
I think when I began to take writing very seriously, I knew that I did not have very much experience with different form. And even though, I felt like, oh, I can just do my own thing, free form, I think there's something to say about knowing the equation. Okay. So,
Yeah.
in school, you got to know the alphabet and then you can do,
Mm-hmm.
the next steps, right?
Yep.
And my mentor, was the person who said, maybe you should write a sonnet. And me being extra, I'm like, well, yeah, let me look up how to do a sonnet and a Petrenkin sonnet. What about a haiku? What about a tonka? So then and then there were some contests online where they were like, oh, write a tonka. And I was like, oh, yes, I'm going to start practicing because, and this might sound scary to people, but it's absolutely true. When you write words, it's a conjuring. It's like a spell.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you have to be careful what you say, what you write. And it gets you in a certain mood. And when you write in a pattern of syllables, that you're forced to do. And a tonka gives you way more freedom. You get 31
Yeah.
syllables, you got it.
Yep.
5 lines. Haiku is a little strict for
Yeah.
me.
A
I
little
like
too much.
it has its place. But the sonnet always brings out the more romantic side, a gothic romantic side of me, because there's always like a volta, there's always a change, right? But there's also that rhyming word, that every other word, uh,
Mm-hmm.
except for the last 2 lines that are rhymed together directly. And so those forms, I think, help me be more creative
Mm.
because it forces you to follow the rules. And then from there, you get inspired and you can do whatever. But I like kind of I don't want to say confinement, but the construct
Yeah.
of certain forms. And I feel like it feels good to the soul. And I think it's a good exercise for any writer
Yeah.
because you might find that that's your jam. And I found that for me, sonnets are is Italian for like little rooms. So it's like
Okay.
little spaces, different spaces, and it's an Italian form. I like the Shakespearean, but
Hmm.
there's other ones. But I was like, well, where did they get that from? And then I was like, oh, they got it from, an Arabic form. And then where did that come from? Oh, that actually came from Mali, the University of
Mm.
too. This is something that is part of our culture. And I think a lot of times it's easy to look at, Shakespeare and, some of the bigger poets that we learn about in school and say, oh,
Hmm.
that's not for us. That's not ours. But there's so much that is ours, but we just don't know about it. We
Hmm.
have to be educated about it. And it's hard to find translations from the universities
Yep.
that taught the whole world how to write,
Yeah.
how to do art and astronomy and things like that. So
Yeah. I love that. When you're figuring out form, do you?
mhm.
'Cause I think some people pick form first and then they try to fit the content into the form. How do you do content first and then figure out
It
form
depends.
later?
I've done both,
Yeah.
actually. I've done both where I said, okay, I want to do a tanka or whatever. And sometimes I have an idea, but I don't know where I want to take it.
Hmm.
And those forms help me take it to the next level. When I write, I like it to be quiet. I like it to have a
Hmm.
candle lit, just kind of really, I know it's very
Yeah.
dramatic, but I always like to have, well, not always, but most of the time I have music, some
Hmm.
type of jazz, something quiet, no words. And it really helps me, connect with what's going on with my mind in that moment. Because I
Yeah.
think when you don't write, it's easy for certain thoughts to go in and out, but
Hmm.
writing forces you to think, forces you to make connections that you might otherwise not
Yeah.
make. And I think, yeah, so I have done it both ways. And then
Okay.
sometimes I'll write a poem and I'm like, I like it, but this can be cut down. And I'm like, actually, you know what? Let's make this something else. So yeah,
Yeah.
it just depends. It depends.
Yeah. That's cool. If you could, this is a question I didn't mention before. So if you could compare the feeling of finishing a poem to something,
Mm.
like what is,
What I
I would
wanted to
love to
say,
know,
I had to
like,
take a beat.
like that
Oh,
moment when you're like,
yeah.
this is the poem right here.
Yes.
What does that feel like to you?
It is the best feeling, especially when you know, end the poem. I'm gonna steal Monique's line. And she said, you want to stick that landing, when you stick that landing at the end
Hmm.
and you feel like you've completed or have come to an epiphany about something.
Mm,
It is so satisfying. Honestly, it is a high that I have become addicted to.
yeah.
And I guess it reminds me of like, that first kiss, that, oh my gosh, what's happening? I literally get tingles. And that's part of the reason why I knew, like, oh, maybe this is my jam, especially when I read good poetry or a good poem
Yeah.
out loud or to myself, you get that feeling, that connection. And I think that's why poetry is so important, right? Because it
Hmm.
puts us in touch with emotions that we may not otherwise cross, always going to work and going to bed and doing the regular
Yeah.
rhythm of the day or whatever. It gives us more empathy for ourselves and for others and helps us explore our feelings and why we feel a certain way, maybe thinking of the world a little differently or see things, differently. And I think that's beautiful and it's important. And that's why I think, part of the reason why I like to share poetry in general and write poetry is to bring it back to the surface. There's a big
Mm.
anti-intellectualism thing going on where it's like, oh, I'm going to have AI do this and that, which I despise AI. I
Talk
hate that it's
about it. Talk
in our.
about it.
I mean, I know we're going down a whole nother
Nah,
road.
you can go there. You can go there.
I know some people are going to be mad at me, but for me, I feel that AI is one of the worst things. We don't need it. It's
Hmm.
terrorizing our land our water sources, and living in Texas where we already have drought issues,
Yeah.
searching and talking to these robots, which is nothing but a dump of all the information other humans have put in there. People are worshiping it like it is, oh, the only thing, the best thing, where it only steals from our own mind. Like, I just feel that one of the things that bothers me about it right now is that we don't have a choice if we
Yeah.
can use it or not. Like, it is,
And everything.
I try to turn it off on my Word. I try to turn it off. I use Canva a lot, and it's like you can't escape it. And
Yeah.
I think that's on purpose. And so, in my revolt to humanity, I
Yeah.
always have to dump on AI for a few minutes, and then also encourage people to read real books. And even if that's challenging, one of the things that I like to do, especially with books that are harder for me to read, like sometimes some nonfiction can be difficult. Bell Hooks, All About Love. So I really love that
Great
book.
book.
When I first opened it up, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to read this.
Yep.
But what I do, and this is a great tip for anybody who's got to read something that they're like, I don't know if I like this. And it ended up, oh man, so many great moments that changed my perception of what love is, right? Listen to the audiobook as you read it and annotate. I like to write in my books. So
Yeah.
anybody want the story of my life, crack open a book, like, what is this?
Yeah.
So a lot of my books have notes in it. I have a notebook, but if I didn't get it from the library, I will, scribble all in the margins as I'm listening to it. And there's something about it that connects, and I'm able to get through the material and even understand it differently. So
Yeah.
I encourage people to do that want to read more. And it doesn't have to be nonfiction, whatever. If you're like, everybody says this book is awesome, because The Alchemist was one like that too, where everybody was like, oh, that book is awesome. And I'm like, I read a few pages. I'm like, what? A boy walks, a boy goes to the desert. I'm like, what is this?
Yeah.
But as it went on, I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing with so much wisdom. But I started listening to it as I read it. And so, yeah, that's a tip and trick.
I love the little crap on AI segment. I think we need more of those. We need more of those. Yeah, but in the spirit of creation, Mosaics of the Mother. Yes. Well, again, congratulations on winning the African Diaspora Award for 2025. Yes, I would love to know kind of what sparked this project for you. Was it the contest that sparked it? Was it something that was already in the works? Just your thoughts behind it?
The only piece that I had written previously was the Nikki Giovanni piece.
Okay.
But everything else came from the contest. And I had done Black Butterfly before. I had found you guys on Poets and Writers, and it took me to a link, and I was like, oh, Kinsman, what's this? Let me read about it. And when I saw the word mosaic, at first I was like, what? Like mosaic. And I thought pieces. Well, what has a lot of pieces? And I'm like, womanhood, motherhood, not always so personal, but also external, the pieces of our journey of humanity here on earth.
Yeah.
And, connecting the pieces. So yes, we have lots of pieces, but what is our through line? What is the connection that we have to ourselves, to our ancestors, to the people that we love? So that's where a lot of it came from. I had started on a little bit of the strength of my ghosts as a ekphractic piece. So sometimes I'll go, this is so nerdy again. Here,
go for it. Go for
nerd.
it. Go for it.
I was working on an ekphractic poetry book, which I can't kind of abandon. One day I hope to get back to it. But I would go to the museum and I would find a piece. And there was a piece by Kevin Beasley. And it was, if I were here, I could stand by myself. I'll have to go back and find the exact name of it.
If I was standing alone, I wouldn't stand it at all.
At all. Exactly. And wait a minute. How do you, okay. You did your research. Look at that. And I had started writing about it, it was a beautiful sculpture piece. And he works a lot with sound, just like poets, but he does it through visual art. And so he had like all these like caftans and like scarves and muumuus, but he had dipped them in resin, so they almost look like ghosts like rising around him, you know. And it just really inspired me to think about, and they didn't have any figures underneath, so this is like they were floating.
Oh wow.
And it had me, you know, thinking about, oh man, the ghosts, the strength of the people, the spirits around us that make us who we are, and what that means. And so I had written something, but it was not going in a direction where I thought it was. And I actually had done a writing session, writer's block session, and we were looking at the piece. She's like, I don't know, this doesn't connect. You're gonna have to, you might want to look at it again. She didn't say you might have to, but you know that look when you share poetry you're hype about and you read it and people look at you like, huh? And that's a big deal, because I think a lot of early writers, you know, what we want to do is like, we have so much story to tell, but we think everybody has the backstory.
Yep.
And so when we tell it and people don't know what we're talking about,
Yeah.
who is the I, who is the we, you have to be specific. That takes bravery.
Yes.
Right? Because people, and especially Black people, do not like to tell their story. Don't you put my story in the street.
Yeah.
You know, older,
come on.
I think as you get older and you take more agency in your life and know that these stories aren't just like an expose, you know, it's to help other people grow and work through things. And if we don't tell our stories, you know, and there's so many to tell, it doesn't mean everything. I just did an amazing workshop with our poet laureate of Texas. Well, she's not current, emeritus Amanda Johnson. And she was saying, you know, look, if you have a story that you're not ready to tell, that doesn't mean you can't write it. It can be for you. She said it a lot more eloquently than that. But she's saying that, you know, you don't even have to read it. If you're invited to a reading, you don't have to read that story. You know, it can still be yours, but you can still express it on the page, you know, and have it connect to people. And so that really spoke to me. I was like, you're right. Like, you know, and then some stories, you know, you process, you go to therapy, you know, you hopefully find healthy ways to deal. And then, you know, I love uplifting, like I love Mary Oliver uplifting stories and things like that, because they are so hard to do. It's so easy to go to that dark space, at least for me.
No, I totally.
It's easier for me to go dark than to go light, but you've got to get that balance, because you want to get the lesson or the revelation from the dark and not just live there. I mean, sometimes it's appropriate to live there. I love my dark poetry, my dark poets club, but you know.
Yeah. Well, I would love it if you would read for us.
Yeah.
If you can. Strength of My Ghost.
Yes. Strength of my ghosts. My two hands are shaking, trying to dam the melancholy splitting open my chest. Prayer bind my chest. 3:33 a.m., alone in bed, wisdom's voice whispers into my heart, hushed with the sharp breath of violence. Parts of this world have met the next, waking parts of me, North African Moors and island girls, healers and harvesters of indigo, Mensa and moonshine, ghosts are rising with ones I know and don't. Clinking bracelet grandmother, what kind of love or self-hate did it take to still love him after he ripped out your eye? Copper keys pressed between the fingers of his fist. Yes, there were always a part of him you were blind to, but it was not a shame to carry alone. No one knew it could be passed down from generations to generations, mother and after, the rhythm, the talents, the humor, hypertension, and a chronic kind of forgetfulness. My mouth so full of tells from eating thoughts in my sleep, I let them lie and swell inside, then wonder how I gain the weight. Truth be my escape, the good, the great, the madness. To hold all of you, all see through, grinding in the warm sand between my toes and levitating. Love and terror crimson, red and black flamed wings are pacing under my skin. A songbirds of soft-armed comfort, hope veiled in halo white, flowing cyan caftans, wide-brimmed church hats, polyester suits and alligator boots, gold chains and black satin do-rags in the jaws of death's black mouth are laments through bent arms of Carolina hickory. The soft sizzle of muffles beneath lake and sea. Bursts of skull bits and a bullet stuck against the wall. Fentanyl foaming through the floorboards. Here, in the wet throat, I listen, shaking as I heal, pulling the lids of my eyes open to the invisible thread of spiraling DNA held by a fragile mosaic of mitochondrial mothers. And then back to the kind, helping hands of my own mother, sowing courage below my breastbone. I was a seed split open, but now sprouting, uncurling my arms, growing towards the blood orange sunrise. I am awake to death's secrets, breathless, still, and certain. But the urgency of truth in living, for me and my children, for this world, and us and you, connected, never alone, no longer afraid.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you. There's a
There's
lot going on in that one.
so much going on. And, I had read it a couple of times even before, recording. And then it's like new things pop up when I'm like listening. I love how you ended that poem. There's like, it goes me, my children, this world, us and you. There's like this, and it goes out and then it comes back in like right to me. Like, you know what I mean? Oh, that's so genius.
Yeah. And that was intentional because I wanted to say, this story is not just mine.
Yeah.
You are a part of this story. We are, brother and sister. We are one on this earth. I think it's really cool when poems bring and invite the reader into the experience. So yeah, that was fun for me to do, and
That's so
definitely intentional.
one of the inviting things too. I love the way you offset these lines here. You kind of like off to the side, and you do this intentionally, obviously, and it goes together and it reads, "And don't be blind to forgetfulness."
Yes.
What does that mean to you?
Yes. So I think, and this is another universal truth, right?
Mhm.
So many of us have stories And then we go tell someone about it years later or whatever, days later, whatever. And they're like, no, that's not what happened. There's a lot of, forgetfulness that happens. And then also, on a more literal level, there is dementia in our family. You know what I mean? And, some people think that's because of stress. They still don't know, there's a genetic component and,
Yeah.
and there's a stress component and things like that. But I think it's important that when people share things with you or when you share your own story, people are slow to say, no, it didn't happen. And
Mm,
quick to hush and listen.
yes.
And yes, people lie, but most of the time when it's a story that's, been held for that long, there's truth to it, an element of truth to it that may have been hard to, discuss. So I do like to sneak in my line work and
Yeah.
my engagements messages and because I
Yeah.
think that's how the world works, right? And signs and omens, things
Yeah.
that we need to pay attention to, that are trying to tell us something.
Yeah. So good.
Thank
So many
you.
things. Thank you so much. Oh man. Well, I always like to ask, as we start to wind down here, what is something I think this episode has been so encouraging, not only for me, but like just I think there's so many gems in here about just being a writer, legacy, all the things, right? But if you were to talk to our audience directly, for a moment, just encourage them in any way, as far as whether that be writing, life, whatever it is, what would be your encouragement to them?
I think one of the hardest things for me to do in this phase of my life is to do something different than what I was doing before. Because you'll have people that literally look at you like you're crazy. Why are you are a doctor or you're an engineer or whatever you do. Why are you writing? That's not going to go anywhere. There's going to be doubters, right? But you always have to remember to be true to your calling and the rewards will come, even if it's not, the accolades, even though I will admit I'm a very driven and competitive person.
Yeah.
Okay. That's my Virgo rising.
Yeah, we need that. We need that. We need that.
And but I think it's important to find that passion. And if you have it, continue to push it and grow with it, and try to forget what other people might be saying. And it's so hard to do. It's so easy to say that.
Yeah.
But I know people that knew me when I was in my 20s that see me on Instagram reading poetry online. They're probably like, she has lost her mind.
How did she end up here?
How did she end up? And don't be afraid not to be great at things at first. Because I know I put myself out on once a month. I dedicated myself. I'm going to do open mic once a month.
What?
And Vocab, she is an excellent, first of all, she was poet laureate of San Antonio, excellent singer, excellent writer, performer. And she really inspired me to say, you've got to put your work out there. You've got to go out and it makes you brave. It is extremely vulnerable. I was terrified and I'm still am, but it's getting better. And I feel like I'm improving. I'm getting better. And the only way you can is by doing the scary things. And so I'd leave everyone with follow your passion. Don't expect to be great at it at first. If you are, fantastic. That's usually not the case. but you could be, sort of good, but the more you work at it and the more you try and, and I continue and I will continue to push myself into, scary spaces to expand myself as a writer and an artist.
Right. Well,
That was too long.
that was great.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. And we're gonna end on that note, guys.
Thank you.
So thank you all for tuning in, and until next time.
Thank
Peace.
you.